Wow, so we're in this book called Silas Marner, and we went over how the history of Silas was set as he came to the town of Ravenlow. This Ravenlow being that English town, kind of descended from the times of Robin Hood. So let's talk. We go to chapter 3 and we see some other characters. We see Squire Cass, who lived in this large red house, and that his wife had died, and he had to raise these two sons. And it says they turned out rather ill, which means they didn't turn out very good. Of course, he's very wealthy, and he wants his sons to marry in the wealthy. We have two classes here, and we have Squire Cass being on the wealthy side, and we'll see this whole business of the very wealthy and then the very poor. So we have two classes: the class that are poor peasants and those that have wealth. Of course, Squire Cass and his two sons are of the wealthy class. So his first son was named Denzi, and they called him Dunstan. And it says he was thick-set, flushed, worse of a wild oat, sowing his wild oats, meaning he was out there being drunk and gambling and all these things and focusing on himself. That was Denzi. And then we have Godfrey Cass, and he's the eldest son, but he also is in love with Nancy Latimer, and she is going to be a character in this. He's in love with her with all of his heart, and he would do anything for her to be married to him. So Godfrey needed money if he was going to get married, right? So he needed the money from his dad, and his dad being Squire Cass, who was actually kind of, fiery. He wanted his sons to do the way he wanted them to do. But so we see right now in chapter 3 this confrontation. Who's it between? It's between the two brothers, Dunsey and Godfrey. Well, you can read chapter 3 and you'll see who is blackmailing who. Dunsey wants to blackmail his brother because he knows something about his brother that nobody else knows. And so he's blackmailing, meaning that he wants his brother Godfrey to give him money so that he won't tell everybody about his past. So then we're thinking, oh, what in the world has his brother done? What has Godfrey done? So he finds out that basically while Godfrey was off, while he was gone, he had got married, and he married a woman named Molly Farron, a young woman named Molly Farron. He had married her, but come to find out that she had a past, and that he had married her as a barmaid, and that she was a drug addict. She was addicted to laudanum, which is opium, a terrible drug, and she was drunk almost all the time. And so Godfrey had left her, and of course didn't want anyone to know that he had married her, and that he wanted to be annulled that marriage. That means that marriage to not be. But of course, she, in the other turn, did not want that. And so here we see Godfrey wanting to marry Nancy Latimer, who basically, is, the beauty of Ravenlow. She's this beautiful woman and a wealthy woman, and of course he is in love with her, but he doesn't want anyone to know that he's already married, just to forget about that marriage. So that is a pretty secret thing to keep, isn't it? That you're already married, and then here you're looking to marry another. So of course Dunsey knows this, and so he's blackmailing him and says, I will tell Dad. When Dad knows about this, of course you're going to be in trouble. Not only that, I'll tell the world. I'll tell Miss Nancy about you. Okay. So we have some characters. We have Molly now. So what is Molly going to do? The drug addict wife. We'll see that in a little bit. So Dunsey decides, this is a really sad part, and this will make you sad too, that Dunsey decides that he wants to get money for Godfrey, but Godfrey doesn't have the cash money right now. So he says, well, you can go sell my horse Wildfire. Now, they had horse racing and gambling, we don't know, but wildfire had been in the family. It seems to me that Godfrey loved his horse, Wildfire, of course. And so Dunstan takes the sale and says, I'll take Wildfire, and I'm going to take him, and, I'll sell him, and then I'll get 120 guineas from him, or how much ever that he wanted. Godfrey, being, 26 years old in that secret marriage, didn't want his past to come, said, yes, indeed, you can take Wildfire. So Godfrey sets out, as we see, sets out hoping, that will cover for the bribe so that his father will not know. His father liked Nancy, of course, and his father really liked the inheritance that might come through marrying Nancy. So Nancy being that woman that Godfrey wanted to marry, and Molly being that woman of ill repute, right? His hidden wife. What a story, huh? We go into chapter 4, and we see Dunstan taking off. And gets through this stone pit, and he sees basically as he goes in, he passes the stone pit, goes in, and that's the stone pit close to where Silas Marner lives, and he sees Silas counting his money kind of through, and like, so that guy has some money. Maybe I can connive him out of the money. But as he goes to the stables, and he sees Bryce and Keating. Those are the two guys that are taking care of the horses. And so he says, well, now I have the sale. My brother has sold to me Wildfire. And they're like, oh no, he can't have Wildfire. He doesn't know how to take care of him. But of course, Dunstan wanted this horse. So he takes this horse, and he takes the horse out, riding the horse, trying to race the horse over in the midst of the dark, and the horse falls. When Wildfire falls, he breaks his legs, and he ends up falling and dying. The horse does. That's a sad thing, isn't it? So Dunstan gets up from that, and he thinks, oh, he's in the middle. It's toward the night, and he knew close by, he saw Silas's house. He says, I'll go to Silas's house. Of course, he has money. Of course, Dunstan wanted money. So he goes to his stone house, and he sees the gleams of light, and he thinks, so he knocks on the door, and then he looks, and he opens the door because Silas is gone. And so is a weaver dead? Maybe he's dead and I could steal his money. So, and he sees, as he goes through the house, he sees this fake hole in the ground, and thinking, So he loosens the bricks, and he looks, and he sees the bags of money. What does he do? You got it. He steals Silas's money. So in chapter 5, we have Silas returning. And he was only 100 yards away, but again, he had a lapse of time, so he might have had a seizure. We don't know. But as he comes back, he had just went out to get some pork from Miss Priscilla Lammeter, and he came and he was delivering some linen to her, and he thought it'd be 20 minutes, and of course it was longer. He gets back to his house, and looking around, he sees the empty hole where his money was. He leaps violently. Yes. And he's trembling like, my money, did I put it somewhere else? So he looks around thinking, what did he do? Did I lose my mind? His knees were trembling. His gold. Where is his gold? That was the love of his life. So he thinks, well, maybe it's Jem Rodney. He was a poacher that maybe he knows about he knew about my money and such. Maybe he came in. Oh, yes, Jem must have came in and stole my money. So he goes out, he puts on his coat, he goes to town to the Rainbow Lodge Inn where all the guys are there. And they're all talking about what's going on. And of course, Jem Rodney is there. So in chapter 6, what do we see? We see the rainbow. Let me turn this light on so you can see a little bit better, I guess. Well, maybe this part should be in the dark anyway. So the chapter goes to the rainbow, and we have the beer drinkers and the pipes playing. We have the butcher, Mr. Macy, the tailor. We have Mr. Tukey, the deputy clerk, Ben Winthrop, a peasant man with talking about his son Aaron singing, and these are important. You'll find out Aaron becomes very important later on. He's just a little boy and with a great singing voice in church. And Mr. Crackenthorpe, another one. And all these people, all these are men of the village. And they're all discussing Mr. Lamater's father and this fine old gentleman, and discussing all the things that have been going on in the town. When they get basically going on, they're discussing the stables and the horses in the stables, and then they start discussing about ghosts, ghostly figures that are in the stables. This ghostly phenomenon. So they're all having these ghost stories. In the midst of these ghost stories, what happens? Yes, you got it. Someone is sneaks in, is standing in the light, in the dark area. The light lights up like a beam of light coming in right now, like coming to me. It lights up this figure, and he seems pale and thin and unearthly, dead lies, like an apparition, like he's in a strange trance. Who is this figure? The dead silence comes back, and everybody looks. Oh, it's a ghost. But was it a ghost? What's your business? Basically, the constable says, "What is your business?" And then Marner says, "Robber, robber! You stole my money! You stole my money!" And he points to Jim Rodney, and Jim Rodney says, "Hey! I didn't study. I should punch you in the face. Why are you accusing me of stealing your money?" And basically we find out that Jem was there all the time. He couldn't have stole the money, but he thought it was Jem. So he pokes at Jem, and then finally the constable there, and that basically says and calms them down and says, settle down. Tell us what happened. So they all settle down around Marner. Says, "Marner, take off your coat. Settle down. Be part of our group." And so he sits down, and he's so forlorn, and he says his money has been stolen. He says, "How much?" 272 pounds, 12 sixpence, so much money. All of his 15 years of savings has been taken from him. And now they're all, as they're discussing, we go into chapter 8 at the Rainbow Lodge. I'm wondering what had happened, because another man joins in. Godfrey comes in. The story of the robbery, they look back at the story of the robbery going on from that point. But we find Godfrey worried about Dunstan and about Wildfire. As we find out, the guys from the stable have come and said that Wildfire was dead. Bryce came to the door and basically saying that he had sold that he was going to be sold for 120 guineas to Dunsey, but Dunsey was not around. So we have this in the midst of all this, but nobody thinks that Dunsey is the culprit, of course, because Dunsey just was on Wildfire, so they never think that he is. So you have this discussion going on at the Rainbow Lodge, and all of these characters, and you can see the characters talking about this, but they're all trying to help Silas Marner think of who could have stolen his money. We go on to chapter 9, and going on to chapter 9 is Godfrey and the old squire. So what happened? Let me say, what happened with Silas? All the town now is alive, knowing about poor Silas. We need to find, and as they go through, you'll see they're looking to see who did this, and they accuse this guy that's coming through town, this pauper that had earrings, and say he has earrings. He must be a thief or a murderer. Of course, they find this tinker box and they think it's him, and of course it's not. And it goes on and on. Everyone's trying to find the mystery of who stole Silas Marner's money. So we go on to chapter 9, which is Godfrey and the old squire. So here we have Godfrey. Of course, Dunsey's not there. He had taken the money and left, But we have Godfrey speaking with his dad, the old squire, and telling him he had to tell him about his favorite horse, Wildfire, which Dunsey had rode and that had fallen and that had died. And so we see this whole thing going on. Of course, the old squire thinks, why was Dunsey and you? Why did you sell Wildfire to him? Was he bribing you for something? So his dad knows something's going on, but he doesn't know about Godfrey's marriage to Molly. He doesn't know about the bribe, but he's upset about what happened with Dunson. The story goes on when basically he changed the whole subject, changes to Nancy Lamater, basically saying, you should get married. His father saying, yes, he would love for you to get married to Nancy. So now going on, he doesn't really tell his dad about his fake, his past, I should say, marriage, and how his life, it has a secret part to it. So, and we go on to chapter 10, and there's still no results of the robbery at all. And we see Silas's withering bereavement and his treasure of gone. But what happened then? The fence is down. He's no more marginalized. He's no more alone. And we see his neighbors coming to help him and coming to talk to him. It's Christmas. We have Mrs. Osgood and Crackenthorpe's coming there and basically saying, come to church. You need to come to church. And you know what he thought about church, as you recall. His thoughts about church, his church, what happened at his church. So he was not into coming to church. But they said, you must come. And Mrs. Osgood saying, there's no call to sit in mourning all the time. You need to come to church and find some kindness. I'll even get you a Sunday suit. We have Mr. Macy inviting him to church, and Mrs. Winthrop is the favorite one, Dolly. She's called Dolly. She comes and brings him food and brings her boy, Aaron, to sing Christmas carols to him because she sees how poor it was that Silas lost the money. So she makes sure that she does her trips, every day or so over there to encourage this man. And basically tell like a sick man to take medicine, like bringing his medicine, which is not his medicine, that basically if he's sick, he needs to come to church. And so she invited him to church, and she brought on Christmas Day, wanted him to come to church, brought him those gifts that she brought him. And basically he does not show up at church. He's not at that point yet of coming to church, we see. And so then we have the New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is this famous chapter of New Year's Eve. We're going to have this New Year's Eve party that's going on at the Red House, there, and all of these very wealthy people of the town coming in, and Miss Nancy and her sister Priscilla being there with their elderly dad, and basically, we see Godfrey coming and wanting to meet Miss Nancy. So we see this love story that Miss Nancy loves this man, Godfrey, a young man, 26 years old, and she knowing that she's wondering why he's so aloof at times. And then we have Godfrey thinking about her in the midst of this dance. What happened? Yes, you couldn't know. And the story goes on in this dance of not only them needing to dance, we see the whole picture of what they look like, and Miss Nancy dancing and somebody steps on her dress, and so she has to go. Priscilla comes running to mend her dress. In the meantime, her and Godfrey have their conversation, knowing that Godfrey really wants to marry Miss Nancy. So we see this love story going, this amazing party and everything, and the music, and then there comes something big that interrupts this huge party on New Year's Eve.